So after spending a little bit over an hour trying out Ana, I'm here to give you some of my thoughts. How's it going, everybody? Force here, and today we're going to take a look at Ana, the brand new support sniper here in Overwatch. Yes, I spent about an hour with her, exclusively playing her, getting a good feel for kind of her playstyle and her strengths and weaknesses, and I want to talk with you about that here in this video. So in the background, we're just going to be running some gameplay from the various matches that I've played, and I want to go through her different abilities, her weapon, and then just talk about how she feels and what it's like to play her. So I'll just start off with her basics. Yeah, she is a support sniper, and from what I can tell, she's really going to be kind of like a mid-range brawler, similar to how Hanzo, while he is a sniper, you play him kind of more close to mid-range. Ana appears to be similar to that as well. Now, the main reason I say that is because she is really kind of weak by herself. She doesn't deal a lot of damage, and she's got no escape mechanism. She can't climb the wall, she can't quickly jump to somebody, she just walks at normal speed, and that's it. Her only saving grace if someone jumps on top of her is the sleep dart, and if you miss that, you're kind of in a lot of trouble because it's got a relatively long cooldown, and your damage is so small that you're not likely to kill someone who gets right up on top of you. So we're talking about someone like Tracer or Winston or Genji. If they get on you, you're kind of in heap loads of trouble. I feel like now she is sort of the weakest in that sense, where it used to be Zenyatta. Zenyatta's now been buffed, he's got 50 more health, and he does a ton more damage than Ana does. And the other problem with her is that she also doesn't get any headshots. That's kind of an issue. Her base damage is relatively low without the ability to get headshot modifiers, which all the other support characters can. Well, I guess except for Symmetra, but I still don't count her as support. She's basically defense. So let's talk about her weapons and her different abilities. Starting off first with the Biotic rifle. So this is the rifle that shoots it's like a dart gun, essentially, okay? And it's got a scope on it, but you don't really use it all that often. Now, if you were to start to play her really far back away from your team, then yes, you would be using a scope, but it's a projectile weapon. So actually hip firing is pretty good because of the relatively large hitboxes on projectiles in this game. It's pretty easy to hit the shots without scoping, and when you scope, all it's really going to do is sort of limit your field of view as well as your mobility. So I found that basically 95% of the time with Ana, I've been playing with her unscoped. Now, if you were to play her way back in the back lines, then yes, you would want to start scoping because of the distance and the travel, you know what I mean? As I mentioned, you don't want to play her far away from your team, because if you do, it's just going to take essentially one Tracer or one Winston to jump on top of you, and if you don't hit your sleep dart, you're screwed. And even if you do, all it's gonna it'll buy you time to get away. So hitting the sleep dart is actually gonna be very, very important with this hero. Now, the rifle, I believe it deals between like 77 and 80 damage. Essentially, I tested it on the target dummies, and it does just over 3 pips of health. And if you didn't know, each one of these bars of health counts for 25, so it does a little bit over 75. So that's why I'm saying it's probably between 77 and 80, and it's the same amount for damage against enemies or healing against allies. Now, as I mentioned, even though it has a scope, because of where you're likely to play her, which is probably in the middle or just barely behind your team, you won't be using the scope all that often. You'll be shooting a lot of the time unscoped. There is no difference between the scope and unscoped damage, and as I mentioned, there's also no headshot damage, so all you have to do is aim for those body shots. The scope animation is pretty quick. It appears to be much quicker than that of Widowmaker's scope to unscope animation, which makes a lot of sense because she doesn't have all of the benefits that Widowmaker has, including the increased damage and the ability to do the headshots with her rifle. So the way her Biotic rifle works makes a lot of sense. It's also a bolt action rifle, basically. So every time you shoot, you have to reload another one of those Biotic darts or whatever. So you can't sort of fire it super quickly. It's got a bit of a time in between each shot. Next, onto her sleep dart. This is her primary defense. This is what you're going to use to try to survive against Tracer, against Winston, against Genji, against anyone who's gonna come right up next to you. Pretty long cooldown, so you really have to make sure that you hit this thing, but the cool thing is when you do, they're down for the count. It looks like the sleep time is somewhere between 6 and 7 seconds, and so long as nobody hits them, they stay down during the duration. Now, one of the really cool things that I found about about the sleep dart. First of all, you can use it to interrupt ultimates, which is awesome, but then also you can use it to just stop an enemy dead in their tracks. There were numerous occasions where an enemy would be in the middle of a firefight with one of my friends. I would toss a sleep dart at them, and it just interrupts their attack and locks them in place briefly. So until they take the next bit of damage, they're interrupted, they stop movement, they stop doing whatever they were doing, and it really gives your team the ability to get that little bit of extra damage on them. Again, just completely locking them down until they take that next bit of damage. So sleep dart's really cool. This is obviously a vital part of her kit. You're gonna have to get really good at hitting with it. There's no question about that. Next up, we've got her Biotic grenade. This is probably, besides her ultimate, my favorite thing about Ana. So the grenade, you toss it out, and it's got a relatively small radius, but it's got a huge effect to it. Number one, any enemies hit within the radius of the grenade can no longer receive healing for its duration, which it also appears to be a pretty long duration. I want to say upwards of 6, 7, maybe even 8 seconds. Its effect lasts a long time. So you essentially shut down healing on whatever enemies that you hit with it. But then on the flip side, any allies that you hit with it receive increased healing, plus it's got a base healing effect. So you've got your basic gun where you shoot that and you hit your target and it'll heal them for just over 3 pips of health. But then you've also got this, which is a little bit of burst health that you can toss at your allies. The throw distance is quite far. You can throw it a tremendous distance, really. It's kind of, I think it might be the longest throwable, maybe on par with that of Widowmaker's poison mine, but it's got a huge distance. So get used to that. Get used to playing with that and trying to toss it at allies from a distance. But the other thing that I realized about this is because since she has no self-healing and she's got no shields that recharge themselves, this is how you heal yourself. So if you get in one-on-one fights, throwing this down at your feet is it is the way that you're going to get your health back up. And I don't know the exact value off the top of my head, but it appears to be like something around 75% of your health bar that it heals. It's close to that. I feel like there are a few times I was about 25% health, I tossed it at my feet, and then I was pretty much back up to full. So it's a nice little extra burst of healing that you get from the Biotic grenade. And then finally, I want to talk about her ultimate Nano boost. I mean, there's no question, like, this is why people, if Ana is played, this is why she will be played. It is huge. You put it on one ally, and it sort of functions Zenyatta's orbs, where you can just mouse over someone and then just toss it out at them. So it's easy. You're not going to miss this, basically. You just point in the direction of who you want to apply it to and hit Q, and it gets applied to them. And they get a boost to speed, a boost to damage, and they take reduced damage from enemy attacks. I mean, this thing, I feel like every single time I threw this on somebody, they almost got a team wipe from it. The effects are tremendous. The increased movement speed, the reduced damage, the increased damage that they deal, and if you throw this on the right hero and by being played by a competent player, they're going to be able to go pretty bananas with this ability and do quite a bit of work. Overall, after playing her for just an hour, my initial impressions are she seems all right. I think that there's probably parts of her kit that might be a little broken, but as to her overall strength, I'm not exactly blown away. As I mentioned, she is now taking the role, kind of the weakest healer, in the sense of her lack of mobility and the lack of defense that she has, relying solely on her sleep dart, because there's pretty much no way, if you're fighting against a competent player, that you are going to out damage them if they get on top of you. It's going to be all about you hitting your sleep dart to incapacitate them, or your allies being able to help you. I'm not saying she is completely defenseless, but she has that no mobility, and she has just so very little damage. So I'm going to be interested to see kind of where she fits in the meta. But I do really like her sleep dart beyond defending herself. It's really good at interrupting ultimates and just interrupting enemies that are in combat with your allies. I love the feel of her rifle. It's a lot of fun to shoot. I've always liked bolt action style weapons in general in games, and this is just one of those. It's pretty cool. And she seems like a fairly competent healer if you're on top and trying to fill that role. So overall, I do like her. I'm not super blown away, but I want to spend more time with her and maybe give you guys some more in-depth impressions later in the week after I've played her for a bit. All right, that's gonna do it, guys, for me here today. Thank you all so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed this gameplay as well as this first impression and breakdown of how she plays and her abilities. I hope you all have a fantastic afternoon, and until next time, I'll see you later.